There's an energy within you that society has taught you to waste. A primal, powerful force the ancients called the sacred fire, and which Napoleon Hill identified as the secret fuel of history's greatest achievers. But you're throwing it away, literally, with every uncontrolled impulse, every empty pursuit of instant gratification, every escape into the virtual world of immediate reward. And what hurts most is that you don't even realize the power slipping through your fingers like sand in the desert. The question that should deeply disturb you is this: if sexual energy is the most creative force in the universe, the one responsible for the very existence of life, what are you doing with it? Are you creating worlds or destroying your own? Are you building empires or feeding emptiness? Are you becoming a god of your own reality or a slave to impulses you don't even understand? 90 days. That's the period separating the ordinary man from the extraordinary man. Not because 90 days are magical in themselves, but because it's the time needed for an internal alchemy to occur, for the energy you've always wasted to begin accumulating, concentrating, and transmuting into something that completely transcends your current understanding of what it means to be powerful. But let's start at the beginning, with the lie they told you about desire. Modern society has convinced you that you're just a sophisticated animal, driven by basic instincts that must be satisfied immediately. They told you that repression is neurosis, that denial is pathology, that resistance is unnecessary suffering, and so you were conditioned to be a slave to every impulse, a hostage to every thought that crosses your mind, a puppet of forces operating in the shadows of your consciousness. Marketing, pornography, social media, everything has been engineered to keep you in a state of constant arousal and immediate release. Because a man who doesn't control his sexual energy is a man who controls nothing. He's a perpetual consumer, an eternal seeker of external satisfaction, a fragmented being who projects his power onto objects, people, and experiences outside himself. But Napoleon Hill knew something modern psychology has forgotten. Sexual energy isn't just sexual, it's the energy of life in its purest and most concentrated form. It's the force that moves the cosmos, that makes the stars shine, that drives all creation. And when this energy is wasted through compulsive and unconscious releases, you're not just losing bodily fluids, you're losing your vital essence, your creative force, your personal magnetism, your ability to manifest realities. Think of history's great geniuses. Tesla, who remained celibate his entire life and channeled all his sexual energy into his revolutionary inventions. Leonardo da Vinci, who transformed his libido into transcendent art. Gandhi, who discovered in celibacy an inexhaustible source of spiritual and political power. Napoleon Bonaparte, whom Hill identified as a perfect example of sexual transmutation into conquest and leadership. They all intuitively understood what spiritual science has always known. Sexual energy is creative energy, and creative energy is manifestation energy. But you were taught the opposite. You were conditioned to believe that resisting impulse is repression, that denying desire is denying life, that controlling sexual energy is psychological castration, and so you became a disguised addict, dependent on regular doses of release to maintain the illusion of living fully, when in reality you're merely surviving in a state of constant energy depletion. Honestly observe your own experience. After each episode of masturbation or casual sex, how do you feel? Energized or drained? Focused or scattered? Motivated or apathetic? Confident or ashamed? If you're brutally honest with yourself, you'll recognize that there's always a drop, a decrease, an emptiness that you try to fill with more of the same behavior, creating a vicious cycle that keeps you trapped in mediocrity. This happens because you're operating under a completely inverted understanding of the nature of sexual energy. You've been conditioned to see it as something that must be eliminated, released, expelled from your system. But the spiritual truth is exactly the opposite. Sexual energy must be conserved, concentrated, refined, and transmuted into higher forces of creation and manifestation. When you stop wasting this energy through compulsive releases, something extraordinary begins to happen in your nervous system, in your brain chemistry, in your energetic structure. The energy that previously escaped through primitive channels begins to rise, to refine itself, to transmute into higher frequencies of consciousness and personal power. The first few days are the hardest, not by chance. You're confronting years, perhaps decades of conditioning, of deeply ingrained neurological patterns, of reward circuits that have been programmed to seek immediate gratification. Your brain, addicted to easy dopamine, will begin to protest, to create elaborate justifications, to invent imaginary emergencies that supposedly require immediate release. But this is just the ego resisting transformation. It's the part of you that profits from mediocrity, trying to maintain the status quo. It's the internal control system that prefers a predictable slave to an unpredictably powerful god. And this is precisely where the journey truly begins, the moment you recognize that it's not just your sexual impulses that are at stake, but your own existential freedom. Between the 7th and 14th day, something interesting begins to emerge. The energy that was previously spent on fantasies, on seeking stimulation, on cycles of arousal and release, begins to accumulate in your system. You may notice a mental clarity you haven't experienced in years. Your eyes become brighter, your posture straighter, your voice deeper and more resonant. This isn't imagination or a placebo effect, it's vital energy returning to your system, revitalizing aspects of your physiology that were chronically depleted. The energy of transformation, a 75-day journey. But the true transformation isn't physical, it's energetic and psychological. You'll begin to realize that your relationship with desire was in fact an escape from deeper aspects of yourself. Each uncontrolled sexual urge was an unconscious attempt to avoid confronting your existential void, your unhealed emotional wounds, your unfulfilled responsibilities, your unrealized potential. Compulsive masturbation, casual sex, pornography, these behaviors serve as psychological anesthetics, allowing you to avoid direct confrontation with the reality of who you are versus who you could become. They're behavioral drugs that keep you in a state of functional unconsciousness, productive enough to survive, but never awake enough to truly live. This is where Napoleon Hill's observations on sexual transmutation become prophetic. He wasn't talking about repression or denial, but about an inner alchemy where the primal energy of desire transforms into fuel for extraordinary achievements. He observed that the most financially successful men, the most charismatic leaders, the most prolific creators, all had one thing in common: they had learned to channel their sexual energy toward purposes higher than mere physical gratification. This means sexual energy becomes creative energy, which becomes manifestation energy, which becomes personal magnetism, which becomes the power of achievement. It's a chain of transmutation where each level is more refined and powerful than the previous one, but it all starts with the conscious decision not to waste the fundamental raw material, your sexual life force. Around day 30, you'll begin to experience something that can only be described as an inner awakening. Your ability to concentrate, which previously fragmented in 1,000 different directions, will begin to unify. Projects that seemed impossible to complete suddenly become manageable. Conversations that once left you anxious now flow naturally and confidently. Situations that used to intimidate you begin to seem like opportunities rather than threats. This happens because you're no longer operating in a state of energetic scarcity. When you regularly squander your sexual energy, you're constantly in deficit, always trying to recoup what's been lost, always functioning below your actual capacity. But when that energy is conserved and transmuted, you begin to operate in a state of abundance, with enough internal resources, not only to survive but to thrive and create. And it's at this point in the journey that I want to extend a special invitation. If this message is resonating with you, if you're recognizing truths you've always known intuitively, but never had the courage to admit, then you've already taken the first step of a transformation that can completely redefine your existence. But profound transformations require consistent guidance, regular insights, and a community of like-minded individuals, sharing the same vision of excellence and personal growth. Therefore, I invite you to subscribe to this channel and activate the notification bell, not just to receive content, but to become part of a movement of men who have chosen to transcend mediocrity and realize their highest potential. Each video you watch will be another tool on your transmutation journey, another key to unlock aspects of yourself you didn't even know existed. Your subscription isn't just a click, It's a declaration of intent to the universe that you're committed to your own evolution. Do it now, while the energy of this revelation still pulses in your chest. Returning to the transmutation journey, day 45 marks an important milestone. You'll begin to notice that your relationship with people has fundamentally changed. There's a presence about you that wasn't there before, a magnetism that attracts opportunities, relationships, and experiences that were previously out of your reach. This isn't luck or coincidence. It's the external manifestation of an internal energetic transformation. When you stop wasting your sexual energy, that energy accumulates and refines into subtler layers of your psychological makeup. It strengthens your aura, intensifies your energy field, and increases your ability to influence and inspire others. You literally become more magnetic, more attractive, more powerful in your personal presence. But the deepest aspect of this transformation isn't social, it's spiritual. Sexual energy is at its core, energy of connection, energy of creation, energy of transcendence. When you waste it through compulsive and unconscious acts, you're fragmenting your own capacity for spiritual connection, both with yourself and with higher dimensions of reality. Around day 60, many men report experiences that can only be described as mystical, more vivid and meaningful dreams, intuitives that prove prophetically accurate, synchronicity that seems to conspire in favor of their highest goals, a growing sense of being aligned with greater forces operating through you, not against you. This happens because conserved and transmuted sexual energy becomes a conduit for frequencies of consciousness that normally remain inaccessible. It's as if you're tuning into a clearer radio station, receiving information and inspiration that was previously blocked by the noise of a constantly drained and fragmented nervous system. And here we arrive at the heart of Napoleon Hill's revelation on sexual transmutation. It's not about denying your sexual nature, but about elevating that nature to a higher octave of expression. Sexual desire, when understood spiritually, is a desire for union, a desire for creation, a desire for transcendence. When this desire is consciously directed toward the creation of art, business, deep relationships, and meaningful achievements, it becomes a force of manifestation impossible to resist. Day 75 marks a point of no return psychologically. You realize you're no longer the same person who began this journey. Your values have shifted, your priorities have reorganized. Situations that once controlled you now seem trivial. Problems that seemed insurmountable now reveal themselves as opportunities disguised as growth and expansion. But perhaps the most profound change is in your relationship with time and reality. When you are no longer trapped in compulsive cycles of seeking and release, of artificial tension and relaxation, you begin to inhabit the present in a completely new way. Time expands, reality becomes more vivid, richer, more saturated with possibilities. You discover you can sustain intense states of concentration for periods that were previously impossible. You can remain present in difficult conversations without emotional fragmentation. You can face complex challenges without seeking escapes or distractions. Your ability to remain centered amidst chaos becomes a source of power that radiates to all areas of your life. And then we arrive at 90 days, the culmination of this alchemic journey. But what actually happens on the 90th day isn't an event, it's a revelation. You realize it was never about resisting sexual desire, but about understanding its true nature and purpose. Desire wasn't your enemy, it was your teacher in disguise, trying to teach you about your own capacity for transmutation and transcendence. At this point, you viscerally understand that sexual energy is creative energy, and creative energy is divine energy. When you learn not to waste it through compulsive releases, but to consciously channel it through higher purposes, you become a co-creator with the most fundamental forces of the universe. Your relationship with sex transforms completely. It's no longer about a desperate search for release, but about sacred communion when consciously chosen. It's no longer about consumption, but about creation. It's no longer about escaping yourself, but about expressing the highest aspects of who you truly are. And herein lies the final paradox of this journey. By relinquishing compulsive sex, you become truly sexual in the deepest sense of the word. Sexual as creative, as magnetic, as powerful, as divine. You discover that true sexuality isn't something you do, but something you are, when operating at your full potential as a conscious human being. But the transformation doesn't stop at 90 days, it only begins, because now you possess a tool of personal power that can be applied to any area of your life. The same discipline you use to control sexual impulses can be applied to control impulses of anger, fear, procrastination, self-doubt. The same capacity for transmutation that transforms sexual energy into creative energy can transform any lower energy into higher manifestation. You become the alchemist of your own existence, able to take any experience, however challenging, and transmute it into growth, wisdom, and power. Problems become opportunities, obstacles become springboards, failures become feedback, rejections become redirects. You develop unshakable confidence, not because your life becomes perfect, but because you become capable of transforming any imperfection into perfection through the conscious alchemy of transmutation. And this is where Napoleon Hill proves prophetic in his observations about history's great achievers. All of them, without exception, had developed this capacity for energetic transmutation. All of them had learned not to be victims of their circumstances, but creators of their realities, through the conscious mastery of their inner forces. The man who masters his sexual energy is not the one who represses it with fear or shame, but the one who understands it as the most sacred force of his being, and treats it with the respect and reverence it deserves. He doesn't flee from desire, but consciously moves through it, allowing it to transform him instead of being transformed by it. This is the fundamental difference between repression and transmutation. Repression is pushing energy down, denying it, trying to destroy it. Transmutation is lifting energy, refining it, consciously directing it toward higher manifestations. The repressor becomes neurotic and fragmented. The transmuter becomes integrated and powerful. 90 days are just the beginning of a journey that can last a lifetime, a journey of constant refinement and elevation of consciousness through energetic mastery. Each day you choose transmutation over dissipation, you are building psychological muscles that become stronger and more refined. You are developing a capacity for conscious choice that extends far beyond sexuality to all areas of human existence. And the ultimate outcome of this journey is not just material success or personal power, although these are natural byproducts of the process. The ultimate outcome is the realization of your true nature as a conscious human being, as a creative force in the universe, as a unique and irreplaceable expression of cosmic consciousness exploring its own infinite possibilities. Through your individual experience, you discover you were always divine, but you had forgotten, always powerful, but you had wasted your power, always creative, but you had directed your creativity toward lower manifestations. The 90-day journey without sex and masturbation doesn't give you anything you didn't already possess. It simply removes the obstructions that prevented your natural power from flowing into its highest expression. And so, the final question is not whether you have the courage to begin this journey, but whether you have the courage to discover who you truly are, when you are no longer hiding behind compulsions and distractions. If you have the courage to find the God that has always resided within you, patiently waiting for you to stop looking for him in places where he could never be found. The sacred fire of sexual energy burns within you at this very moment, waiting to be consciously directed toward the creation of a life that is worthy of your true nature. The choice is yours. The power has always been yours. The transformation is available now, not in some imagined future, but in this present moment, where all true change always happens. The journey begins with a single choice: to choose consciousness over unconsciousness, creation over consumption, transcendence over mediocrity. And this choice, consistently repeated for 90 days, has the power to redefine not only who you are, but who you are capable of becoming. The universe is waiting to conspire in favor of your transformation. Your life force is waiting to be channeled into extraordinary achievements. Your higher self is waiting to emerge from the shadow of patterns that no longer serve you. Everything is waiting for you. The only question that remains is how long will you make everyone wait?